The desperate Plea air was thick with tension, and the sound of heavy boots echoed through the deserted streets. The once bustling alien city now lay in ruins, a reminder of the war that had taken so much. In the heart of this broken city, a mother knelt before the human commander, her hands shaking as she clutched her son's small, trembling hand. The human's eyes were cold, his expression unreadable as he stared down at her. His uniform was spotless, and his posture proud. But there was something behind those eyes, something hard and unfeeling. This was the moment where everything in her life would change. "I beg you," the mother's voice cracked, her plea echoing in the empty streets. "Take me. Let my son go. He is only a child. He has nothing to do with this war." The human did not speak for a long moment, his gaze unwavering. He watched her, studying her face, taking in the fear, the desperation, the love she had for her son. Her alien features were soft, though her eyes held a fire that no one could deny. She was a mother, desperate to save her child, willing to sacrifice anything for him. But the human did not respond right away. He glanced at the boy standing beside her. The child was small, barely old enough to understand the horrors around him, but his wide, innocent eyes mirrored the fear in his mother's heart. He clutched the orange fruit in his hand, not understanding the gravity of the situation, but feeling the weight of it in the pit of his stomach. "Please," the mother repeated, her voice softer now. "Take me instead of him. Let him go. He has no future here. Please." Her words came faster, almost frantic now, as she looked up at him, tears starting to form in her eyes. She had never imagined it would come to this, that she would have to offer herself in exchange for her child's life. The human commander remained silent, his face as cold as stone. He turned away, his boots crunching on the debris-strewn ground. The mother's heart raced. Had she failed? Had her desperation meant nothing to him? She could feel the weight of her son's tiny hand in hers, his innocent grip tightening. He didn't know what was happening, but he knew something was wrong. And then the commander stopped. He didn't turn to face her, but he spoke. His voice was deep, steady. "You offer yourself to me, but what would I gain? What could I possibly want from someone like you?" His words were blunt, and for a moment the mother's heart sank. Was he mocking her? Was he looking for something else? But then something shifted in his tone. A small, almost imperceptible pause before he continued. "I could take you both, but I'm not interested in your life. I have no need for it." The mother's breath caught in her throat. She was still trembling, but something about his words was different now. He wasn't completely rejecting her. There was a chance, a faint glimmer of hope. What do you mean?" she asked, her voice trembling with both fear and curiosity. The commander turned back to face her, his eyes softening just a fraction. For the first time since they had met, there was a hint of something else, something more human beneath his hard exterior. "You don't understand," he said slowly. "I don't want you. I don't want him either. But I can't just let you both die. You have value, even if you don't see it. And so does your son." The mother blinked, trying to process his words. What was he saying? Why was he showing mercy now? What kind of human showed mercy to those they had captured in such a brutal war? "You have a choice," the commander continued. "I'll let your son go. He will be safe. But you will remain here. Your life will be spared, but only if you accept the terms." He paused again, his expression unreadable. "Do you accept?" The mother stared at him, her mind racing. Was it the moment where everything would change? She could feel her son tugging at her sleeve, his innocent face full of trust. She had to make the right choice. She had to think of his future, even if it meant she would never be a part of it. "I accept," she whispered, her voice barely audible. She had no other choice. This was the only way to save him. The human commander nodded once, a brief acknowledgement of her decision. "Then it is done." The mother's heart ached as she watched her son being led away, his small figure disappearing into the distance. She wanted to run after him, to hold him close, but she knew that her decision had been made. She had sacrificed everything for him. And now, all she could do was hope that he would live the life she could no longer protect him from. As the human turned and began to walk away, the mother stood alone in the broken streets, the weight of her choice sinking in. She had given up everything, but in return, her son would have a chance. And for her, that was enough. But as she watched him fade into the distance, a question lingered in her mind. What would the future hold? Would the human keep his word? And more importantly, would the mercy he had shown her mean something more than just a momentary act of kindness? Only time would tell. Unexpected mercy. The sun had barely risen the next morning when the mother found herself in an unfamiliar, barren room, its stone walls cold and unwelcoming. She had been placed in a small, dimly lit cell, but despite the physical discomfort, it was the emotional weight that crushed her. The space was empty, save for a single cot, a table, and a small window high up on the wall that let in just a sliver of light. Her mind raced with questions. Where was her son? Was he truly safe? Had she made the right choice by agreeing to the commander's terms? She had offered herself willingly, believing in the humanity of the man who had shown her mercy. But she could not shake the sense of unease that gnawed at her every moment. There had to be more to his actions than just compassion. She had seen the way he had looked at her when she made her desperate plea. It had been more than just an offer. It had been a decision, a choice made with some deeper understanding. What did he know that she didn't? Was there more to this human commander than met the eye? As she sat on the edge of the cot, her hands trembling, the door to the cell suddenly creaked open. A tall, broad-shouldered man in a military uniform stepped inside. It was the commander, the same man who had promised her son's safety. His face was as stern as ever, but something had changed. His eyes seemed less cold, as if some part of him was beginning to soften. The mother stood up instinctively, her heart pounding in her chest. "Where is my son?" she demanded, her voice steady despite the fear that threatened to break through. The commander raised an eyebrow, as if surprised by her tone. "Your son is safe," he said, his voice calm. "He is being cared for, and I have made sure that he will be protected. But there are things you need to understand." She stepped closer, her eyes searching his face for any hint of doubt. "What do you want from me? Why did you show me mercy? I don't understand. Why not just take me and end it?" He sighed, and for a brief moment, the hardness in his gaze softened. "I didn't do it for you." "Not exactly," he began, his tone more thoughtful than before. "I did it for him, your son. I saw something in you, a strength I didn't expect." The mother's heart raced as she tried to process his words. "What do you mean?" she asked quietly, her voice barely a whisper. The commander glanced toward the door, then back at her. "You made the ultimate sacrifice for him. That kind of love is rare, even among our people. I couldn't just take him from you, not when I saw how much you cared. But I didn't do this out of kindness alone. There are other reasons that are beyond your understanding. The words hung in the air, thick with mystery. The commander's eyes darkened for a moment, as though he was wrestling with something deep within himself. He took a step closer, his presence imposing. Your planet has a past, one that links it to mine in ways you can't yet comprehend. This war, this destruction, it's more than just a fight for survival. It's a matter of balance, and sometimes sacrifices are needed, even from those who don't deserve it. The mother felt her legs grow weak, her thoughts swirling in confusion. Balance? What are you talking about? I don't understand any of this. The commander's gaze softened once more. I'm not asking you to understand now, but know this: your son will be safe, and I'll make sure no harm comes to him. You have my word. For a moment, the mother simply stared at him, the weight of his words sinking in. She had offered herself to save her son, but now she was being told that this was only the beginning. There was more to this story than she had ever imagined. More than just the mercy of one man. The fate of her planet, her son, and her future were all tangled in a web she couldn't yet see. The commander turned to leave, but before he reached the door, he paused. I will check on you again later, he said. You'll want to be ready. Ready for what? She asked, her voice tight. Everything, he replied, his tone now grim. The war is far from over. And with that, he walked out of the room, leaving the mother standing alone in the silence, her mind racing. What had she gotten herself into? Would the commander keep his word, or was there something far darker waiting for her in the future? She couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning of something far more dangerous than she had ever imagined. Her thoughts turned to her son. She had saved him, but what had she truly saved him for? The hidden motive days passed, and the mother sat in her small, sterile room, the walls closing in around her. She had tried to stay calm, to remind herself that her son was safe, but doubts crept into her mind like shadows. The commander's words echoed in her thoughts. This is just the beginning. What did he mean? What was he really planning? The silence in the room was maddening. She had no way of knowing where her son was, or if he was truly being protected. The commander had said she would be ready, but for what? She couldn't shake the feeling that she had entered a game far bigger than herself one she didn't fully understand. Then, one evening, the door to her room opened again, but this time, it wasn't the commander who stepped inside. Instead, a young man entered, wearing a dark uniform that didn't quite match the commander's. He was tall, with dark hair and sharp features, and he moved with a quiet grace, as though he belonged in the shadows. Are you, the prisoner? He asked, his voice low but filled with curiosity. There was something about him, something in his eyes that felt different from the cold distance of the commander. The mother stood quickly, instinctively guarding her space. I'm not a prisoner. I was promised my son's safety. The young man smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Your son is safe for now, he said, walking over to the small window and looking outside. But that doesn't mean it will stay that way. She felt a chill crawl up her spine. What do you mean by that? She asked, her voice barely a whisper. He turned toward her, his eyes narrowing slightly. You're part of something much bigger now. The commander is ... not what you think. He has his reasons for everything, but trust me, they're not all good. The mother's heart began to race. What are you talking about? What does he want from me? From my son? The young man's gaze dropped to the floor, as if he were weighing whether or not to speak. After a long pause, he finally said, "The commander's mercy wasn't just about you or your son. It's about something far darker, something connected to both of you." She shook her head in confusion. "I don't understand. What do you mean?" He stepped closer, lowering his voice even more. "Your son, ... He's not just any child. He's a key. A key to something the commander needs, something he's been searching for. That's why he spared you both. The mercy wasn't for you, it was for your son." The words hit her like a slap. Her breath caught in her throat as the weight of his words settled in. "A key to what?" she demanded, stepping forward. "What are you talking about? What does he need from my son?" The young man looked around, as if making sure no one could overhear, before he leaned in closer. "I don't know all the details," he said in a hushed tone. "But the commander is after something ancient, something that could change the course of this entire war. And your son is somehow tied to it. He's the key to unlocking it." The mother took a step back, trying to process the flood of information. "No, this can't be true," she murmured, shaking her head. "My son is just a child. He's innocent." The young man's expression softened, and for the first time, he seemed almost sympathetic. "I know, but it doesn't change what he is. The commander knows something you don't, and he's willing to use anyone to get what he wants. Even your son." Terror washed over her. The world she had known was unraveling before her eyes. She had trusted the commander's mercy, believed in the humanity he had shown. But now it seemed that mercy had been nothing but a mask, hiding a much darker reality. The young man stepped back, his face hardening. "You need to be careful. There are more forces at play here than you realize. The commander may be the one protecting your son now, but that could change. If he finds what he's looking for, no one will be safe." Before she could respond, the young man turned and left the room, his footsteps echoing in the silence that followed. The mother stood frozen, her heart pounding in her chest. She had thought she was making the right choice when she had offered herself to save her son. But now, she wasn't sure what kind of future she had saved him for. Was he truly safe? Or had she made a deal with someone far more dangerous than she could ever have imagined? The thought twisted in her mind like a knife. What if she had unknowingly placed her son in the hands of a man who would use him as a pawn in his own dark game? She couldn't let that happen. She had to find a way to protect him before it was too late. But first, she needed to know the truth, and to do that, she would have to confront the commander again. As she stood there, her resolve hardening, one thought echoed in her mind. The truth was out there, and she would find it no matter the cost. Breaking the cycle, the days blurred together as the mother's mind churned with the dark possibilities she had learned from the young man. The sense of dread that had taken root in her heart only grew stronger with each passing hour. She had trusted the commander. She had believed that his mercy was genuine, that he had shown her compassion in a world ravaged by war. But now, everything seemed like a liar, carefully constructed facade meant to hide his true intentions. She spent every moment of her time trying to piece together the truth, working through the bits of information she had gathered. The commander had spared her son, but why? Was it truly out of kindness, or was there something far more sinister at play? Her thoughts were interrupted one morning when the door to her cell opened with a creak. The commander stood in the doorway, his eyes piercing, his expression unreadable. The mother's heart raced as she stood from her cot, her hands trembling. "May I speak with you?" The commander's voice was calm, but there was an edge to it that made her uneasy. She nodded slowly, her mind still racing. I have questions, and I deserve answers. The commander stepped inside, closing the door behind him. He glanced around, as if making sure they were alone, before meeting her gaze. I told you before, he began, his voice steady. But there was a flicker of something in his eyes, something she couldn't quite place. Your son is safe. That is my word, and I intend to keep it. She stepped closer, her eyes narrowing with suspicion. I don't believe you, she said, her voice unwavering. You didn't spare my son out of kindness. There's more to this. You wanted him. He's not just a child, is he? You're using him for something. What is it? The commander paused, as if taken aback by her boldness. For a moment, there was silence. Then, finally, he spoke, his tone quieter, more serious. You are right, he admitted. I didn't spare your son out of kindness. Not entirely. He is ... important. More important than you can imagine. Her breath caught in her throat. What does he have to do with this war? What is he? To you? The commander looked at her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. There are things in this universe that most do not understand. Secrets buried deep within the fabric of existence. Your son is tied to one of those secrets. He is a key, not just to this war, but to something much older, much more powerful than either of us. The mother's stomach twisted. What does that mean? What is he a key to? The commander stepped forward, lowering his voice. I cannot give you all the details, not yet. But I will say this. Your son's bloodline carries the power to unlock a force that could shift the balance of this entire galaxy. It could end the war, or it could destroy everything. The weight of his words crushed her, her mind struggling to comprehend what he was saying. You're telling me my son, my innocent son, could be the reason this war ends, or the reason everything is destroyed? The commander nodded. Yes. His bloodline is the key to an ancient power, a power that has been sought by many, but only a few can unlock. I need him to help me secure it. If I can control this force, I can end this war once and for all. But there are others who would destroy everything to get their hands on it. That is why I spared him. The mother staggered back, her mind reeling. She had believed she was saving her son from death, but now she realized she had only placed him in the middle of a far greater conflict, one that could cost them everything. But what if you're wrong? She whispered, her voice breaking. What if you use him, and it destroys everything instead? What if you're not the one who should control this power? The commander's gaze softened, though his face remained grim. I understand your fear, but I'm not the only one who seeks this power. There are enemies out there far worse than I. I am trying to protect him, protect you both. If you let me, I can ensure your son's safety. The words rang hollow in her ears. She had trusted him before, but now everything felt like a carefully crafted lie. She had sacrificed herself to protect her son, but now she realized that the true battle was only just beginning. She wasn't sure she could trust the commander any longer. The silence between them grew heavy and tense, as the commander watched her, waiting for her response. Finally, she spoke, her voice steady but full of defiance. I won't let you use my son as a weapon, she said, her eyes blazing with a fierce determination. If you truly care about him, you will protect him. You will stop whatever plan you have and give him a chance to live. I don't care what this power is. I don't care if it can end the war. I will never let my son be your pawn. The commander looked at her for a long moment, as if weighing her words. Then, without saying another word, he turned and walked toward the door, his footsteps echoing in the quiet room. Before leaving, he glanced back over his shoulder. "You will understand one day," he said, his voice low, "but by then it may be too late." The door slammed shut behind him, leaving the mother standing alone in the silence, her heart pounding in her chest. She had made a choice, a promise, to protect her son no matter what. But now, more than ever, she knew that the true fight for her son's future had just begun, and she would do whatever it took to break the cycle, no matter the cost. A twist in fate. The days that followed were filled with an unsettling quiet. The commander's words still echoed in the mother's mind, but she couldn't quite make sense of them. The power he spoke of, the force that her son was meant to unlock, it was all too much to comprehend. How could her son, just a small, innocent child, be tied to something so dangerous, so world-shattering? She paced the small room, her mind racing. She had to protect him. She couldn't let him become a weapon for anyone, not even for the commander. Despite his promises of safety, the more she thought about it, the more certain she became. There was something the commander wasn't telling her, something he hadn't fully revealed. And then, as if fate had decided to push her towards the answers, the door to her cell opened again. It was the young man from before, the one who had warned her about the commander. He stepped inside quickly, looking around before closing the door behind him. His face was tense, his eyes filled with urgency. "We don't have much time," he said, his voice low. "You need to listen to me." The mother's heart skipped a beat. She hadn't expected him to come back. "What is it? What do you know? Tell me everything." He glanced over his shoulder one last time before moving closer to her. "The commander, he's not the only one who wants your son," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "There are others, even more dangerous, who are after him. If they find out where he is, they will destroy everything in their path to get to him, including you." The mother's breath caught in her throat. "Who are these people?" she demanded. "Why didn't you tell me this before?" "I couldn't," the young man said, shaking his head. "I had to be sure you could handle it. The commander isn't entirely in control of the situation. He's playing a dangerous game, and he's not the only one with plans for your son." Her stomach turned. She had known there was something off about the commander, but now she realized just how deep the danger ran. "What do I need to do?" she asked, her voice shaking. "How can I protect him?" The young man stepped closer, lowering his voice even further. "There's a place, a hidden base, far from here. The commander knows about it, but he hasn't told you. It's where they're keeping the last of the ancient artifacts, the ones connected to the power your son's bloodline can unlock." Her eyes widened in disbelief. "You mean there's more power?" "Yes," he replied, his face grim. "The artifacts are part of a much older plan, a plan that's been in motion for centuries, and your son is key to unlocking them." She stumbled back, her mind racing. "But the commander, he said he was protecting us. He said he wanted to end the war. How can I trust him if he's hiding things like this from me?" The young man's gaze hardened. "Because the commander is a part of it. He's not just protecting your son, he's using him. But you can stop it. You can keep him from becoming part of this twisted cycle." The mother's heart pounded in her chest. How? How can I stop this?" He looked at her with a mixture of pity and determination. "You need to get to the base before anyone else does. before the commander or anyone else can get their hands on those artifacts. If you don't, your son will become the key to something far worse than you can imagine." The mother swallowed hard, the weight of his words crashing down on her. She had thought she was protecting her son by agreeing to the commander's terms. But now she realized the truth. She had to do everything in her power to break free from this nightmare, to protect her son from a fate worse than death. "I'll go," she said, her voice firm with resolve. "I'll find this base, and I'll get my son out. I'll protect him, no matter the cost." The young man nodded, his eyes full of respect. "You have the strength to do it, but you have to be fast. You don't have much time. The commander's plans are already set in motion, and if you don't act now, it may be too late." With that, he turned to leave, but before he opened the door, he paused and looked back at her. "Remember, the commander isn't just a soldier," he warned. "He's a part of something much larger, something that could change the galaxy forever. If you don't stop him, everything you know could be destroyed. You've been given a choice, but now you have to make it count." The door closed behind him with a soft thud, and the mother was left standing alone in the room, her mind a whirlwind of thoughts and emotions. She had known there was more to this story, but now it was clearer than ever. The commander was not the hero she had hoped for. He was part of a much darker plan, one that she had to stop before it consumed her son and everything she loved. The path ahead would not be easy, but there was no turning back now. She had to protect her son, no matter what it took. She would find the base, get to the artifacts, and make sure no one else could use her son's bloodline for their own twisted purposes. It was time to break the cycle. The choice of sacrifice the mother didn't waste any time. She had heard enough. The clock was ticking, and her son's future, along with the fate of everything she had fought to protect, depended on the choices she made in the coming hours. With every step she took through the cold, empty hallways of the human facility, her mind raced. She had to act fast. She couldn't let her son fall into the hands of anyone who saw him as a weapon, no matter what his bloodline held. The young man's words echoed in her mind. The commander's plans are already set in motion. She didn't know exactly what those plans were, but she understood that time was running out. The power that her son held within him was something the commander, maybe even others, wanted to control, and she would not allow that. The facility's layout was unfamiliar to her, but she moved quickly, her footsteps echoing in the cold, sterile corridors. Every part of her screamed to turn back, to find the safety of her room and wait. But waiting meant risking her son's life. Waiting meant giving the commander and whoever else was involved the chance to act. Before she could do anything about it, her heart raced as she neared a locked door at the far end of the hall. This was the place she had to break into to reach the hidden base. The room beyond contained the answers, the artifacts, and whatever else she could use to stop the commander and anyone else who was after her son. She glanced around, making sure no one was watching. Her fingers trembled as she reached for the door's control panel. She had no experience with this kind of technology, but the young man had given her a small device, a key. He'd called it that could bypass the security. She inserted it into the panel, holding her breath as she pressed the button. For a tense moment, nothing happened. Then, with a soft click, the door slid open, revealing the darkness beyond. Without a second thought, she stepped inside. The room was vast, filled with old technology and artifacts that hummed with power. Some of the objects appeared to be ancient, others more modern, but all of them held a strange energy, a sense of significance that was impossible to ignore. Her heart pounded as she moved further into the room, searching for the answers she needed. Suddenly, a soft sound behind her made her freeze. She whipped round to find a figure standing in the doorway. The commander. She should have expected him, but the sight of him still made her blood run cold. His eyes were fixed on her, his face unreadable, and for a moment it felt as if time itself had stopped. "Did you think you could run from this?" he asked, his voice low and steady. "Did you think you could stop it?" The mother felt her body tense, but she held her ground. "I'm not running," she said, her voice firm. "I'm protecting my son. I'll do whatever it takes to stop this. To stop you." The commander's lips twisted into a faint smile, though there was no warmth in it. "You don't understand, do you? This warrit's bigger than you, bigger than your son. You think you can stop me, but there are forces at play here that even I don't fully control. You're just one piece of the puzzle." Her heart sank. "What does that mean? What are you really after? Why are you using my son?" The commander took a step closer, his presence overwhelming. "Your son's bloodline is the key to the power I seek. I didn't want this war, but it's the only way to gain control of the power that can save us all. Your son's life is the price of that power." The mother shook her head, her eyes filled with disbelief. "You're lying. You're willing to sacrifice him for power." The commander's eyes darkened. "I'm not sacrificing him. I'm offering him a chance to change the world, to end this war, to bring peace. But if you're not willing to accept that, then we have nothing more to discuss." The mother took a step forward, her resolve hardening. "I will never let you use him. I will never let you turn him into a weapon. You don't get to decide his fate." The commander's eyes narrowed. "You don't have a choice. This war doesn't care about what you want. It doesn't care about your son's life. It will tear everything apart unless someone takes control. That someone is me." For the first time, the mother saw the commander for what he truly was. Man willing to sacrifice anything, even the life of a child, for the illusion of control. She understood now. He wasn't the protector he had seemed to be. He was just another part of the endless cycle of war. "I won't let you," she said, her voice steady with the weight of her decision. "I won't let you destroy him, or anyone else. I'll stop you, no matter what it takes." The commander didn't respond right away. He just stood there, staring at her. And in that silence, the mother knew that this was the moment. The moment where she would make the hardest choice of her life. She had promised to protect her son. She would do whatever it took to keep him safe, even if it meant standing against the very force she had once believed would save them. "I will stop you," she whispered, her voice full of resolve. "And I will protect my son, even if it costs me everything." With one last look at the commander, the mother turned and ran, her heart pounding in her chest. The battle was far from over, but she had made her choice, and she would fight with everything she had to keep her son's future safe, no matter the cost. Redemption and forgiveness, the mother ran through the darkened halls, her heart pounding in her chest, her breath shallow and quick. Every step she took felt like a battle against time itself, as though the world was closing in around her. She could still hear the commander's voice echoing in her mind, telling her that there was no escaping the reality of the war they were caught in. But she refused to believe him. She refused to accept that her son's life, his future, was a price that had to be paid for power. As she reached the end of the corridor, she spotted the small airlock leading to the outside. The guards, she knew, would be close, but she had no choice. She had to move quickly, She had to protect her son. Her thoughts turned to him, her little boy, the reason she had made every decision up until now. She hadn't just agreed to the commander's terms because she feared the alternative. She had agreed because she loved her son more than anything in this universe. And now she would do whatever it took to save him from becoming part of a system that would destroy everything he stood for. The airlock door opened with a soft hiss, and she stepped outside, taking in the cold night air. The landscape stretched out before her, barren and empty. It was the first time she had been out of the facility since arriving, and the vast emptiness of the world around her only made her feel more isolated. But she couldn't stop now. She had to find her son. The world was silent, the only sounds coming from the distant hum of machinery and the crunch of her footsteps on the gravel beneath her boots. She moved swiftly, her eyes scanning the horizon, searching for any sign of life, any hint of where the commander might have taken her son. She had barely made it a few yards when she heard a familiar voice calling her name. It was faint, carried by the wind, but it was enough to make her heart leap in her chest. Her son, Mum. The voice was trembling, uncertain, but unmistakable. She turned, and there he was, standing just a few feet away, his small figure bathed in the pale light of the facility's distant glow. His eyes were wide, filled with confusion and fear. She rushed to him, dropping to her knees as she pulled him into her arms. "You're safe," she whispered, pressing him tightly against her chest. "I won't let anyone hurt you, I promise." The boy clung to her, his little hands gripping her tightly as if he feared she might disappear. "Mum, what's happening? Why are we here?" She stroked his hair gently, trying to calm the storm of emotions inside her. "We're leaving, sweetheart. We're going to be okay." But just as she was about to stand and take him in her arms, a sound cut through the air sharp, commanding, unmistakable. The commander's voice. "Stop right there." The mother froze, her heart sinking. She had hoped for a moment of peace, a moment where she could hold her son and know that everything would be okay. But the commander was here, right on their heels. He stepped out of the shadows, his tall frame silhouetted against the dim light. His eyes locked on her, and for a brief moment, she saw something she hadn't expected, a glimmer of uncertainty, of something softer behind his rigid, military exterior. "You're making a mistake," he said quietly, his voice tinged with something that sounded almost like regret. "I didn't want this for you, for either of you." The mother stood, holding her son tightly in her arms. "You lied to me," she said, her voice steady, though the weight of her emotions threatened to break through. "You used me. You used my son as a pawn in your war." The commander's face softened for a moment, a flicker of remorse passing through his eyes. "I didn't mean for it to happen this way. You don't understand what's at stake here." "I understand enough," the mother replied. "You don't get to decide who my son is. You don't get to use him for your own purposes. I won't let you." The commander stepped forward, his hands held up in a gesture of peace. "You don't have to do this. You don't have to run. There's another way. I can protect you both. You don't have to fight this fight alone." The mother shook her head, her resolve growing stronger with every word. "No, you've made your choices, and I've made mine." The commander's expression hardened, but there was no anger in his eyes, only a quiet acceptance. "You're right," he said softly. "I can't force you to stay, and I can't change what I've done, but I can offer you this. Your son's future is still in your hands. What you choose to do now will determine the rest of your lives." She felt a strange wave of understanding wash over her. She wasn't sure if the commander was truly offering her a chance at redemption, or if he was simply trying to control the situation one last time. But what mattered now was that her son was safe, and she had the power to make the right choice for both of them. The mother looked down at her son, his small hand gripping hers, his eyes filled with trust. She knew what she had to do. "We're leaving," she said, her voice full of conviction, "and we're never coming back." With that, she turned away from the commander, her son safely in her arms. The decision had been made. She would protect him, and she would fight for the future he deserved, no matter the cost. As they walked into the night, leaving behind the ruins of the war and the commander's tangled web of power, the mother felt a strange sense of peace settle over her. The path ahead was uncertain, but she knew one thing for sure: redemption and forgiveness were not for others to give. They were for her to take, and she would take it one step at a time, for her son and for the future she would build, free from the chains of war.